Your data is like gold to hackers, and they'll sell it to the highest bidder. Are you protected? McAfee helps shield you, blocking suspicious texts, malicious emails, and fraudulent websites. McAfee Secure VPN lets you browse safely, and its AI-powered text scam detector spots threats instantly. You'll also get up to $2 million of award-winning antivirus and identity theft protection, all for just $39.99 for your first year. Visit McAfee.com. Cancel anytime. Terms apply.
Ampire. Hey babies, hey babies. Hi everyone, hi everyone. I'm getting over whatever illness I had. Still not gone yet, Callow. I don't know. This has been like 5 straight days of it, but I've turned a corner, so I'm feeling better now.
I mean, that's good, at least. It's better than feeling worse. So not the worst sickness in the league.
It seems like everybody has some range of flu that didn't exist 6 months ago. That's what it seems like. My son, who has it now, told me there were multiple teachers out of his school the other day, which was like, well, if you didn't get it from me, you're going to get it from there.
Yep.
And it's like every kid we know had something, and it's all ranged, like from crazy bird flu to mad cow. It's like somewhere in the middle. Everybody's had something like that this year. So I had something like that too. I don't know what it is.
This seemed to start, at least in my friend group, around like New Year's. People were getting pneumonia, and it was like, what? Like my age, like, you know, 30, 35. And I was like, this is weird. And now it's like all these other things on top of it. So,
I mean, I think it goes without saying we're in end times. I think we all know this, you know, we are. So how are we all going to die? I don't know, but it sounds like it's all ramping up that way in so many different ways. So let's just enjoy it because
wait, do the people that tell us that they're going to be end times, do those people exist anymore? I don't know if those people exist.
They're like, told you. They're just like, yeah, I'm like, you're 30 years too late, but they're like, told you. Here it is. You know, they're going to come up with some numerology that 2025 was it. So, you know, like they'll always end up being right. They're meteorologists. Right. Even when they're wrong, they'll eventually be right because we will all die from something. I don't know, I saw something about some asteroid coming here in like a few years too. And like, well, you know, since the military's politicized, you know, we're not going to blow it up because, you know, the asteroid is probably friends with Putin. You know, like, I don't know. Like, who knows? Who knows what's going to happen next? Anyway, I'm going to enjoy what we have left on Earth because we're in the middle of a renaissance here, guys. Like, I'm starting to fully believe it now. Obviously, what happened with the Commanders was almost unprecedented. They were so close to doing things no team has ever done before. It would have been the greatest, might have been the greatest turnaround in NFL history anyway, as far as they went, and what it looks like it's a launching point towards. But what else is going on around here? It's rubbed off on everybody, including what happened over the weekend with the Capitals, which was Ovi had a hat trick yesterday. No goals in the 8 that they scored against Pittsburgh the day before. They were shot out of a cannon out of this off this Four Nations thing. I wonder, maybe you would know the answer to this. Were they offended that none of their players took part in that tournament? Because Ovechkin obviously couldn't play in it because there was no Russian delegation team in it, which I think is geopolitical and probably a mistake because there's so many good Russian players in the NHL that, like, can we just put that stuff aside and let them play in a tournament like this? But he was ineligible because of that. But there are plenty of really good players on this team. None of them were selected for it. So I don't know if it's they caught a break and their team was healthy and they caught this rest, or if they were offended because they showed up this weekend off of this thing and looked like the greatest team hockey's ever created.
It's a little bit of everything. I'll peel back one layer that I only heard about yesterday, and it was because Connor McMichael joined our friend John Walton on the broadcast after the game. First, to unpack the Four Nations thing, yes, there was a little bit of a, like, I kind of can't believe they didn't pick one of us to go. Like I told you, the two that really stand out are Tom Wilson and Logan Thompson. Yeah. Canada's goaltending wasn't amazing by any means. Bennington came up big in the championship. I'm not taking that away from him. But like, you looked at USA's lineup, you said, I wonder who could counter that. I don't know. Maybe the 220-pound Tom Wilson would have kept the Tkachuk brothers in check. Like, yeah. So there was this kind of overarching, like, not offended, but like, we're the best team in the league, and you don't think there's a single player that belongs on any of those teams. So there wasn't this overarching, like, animosity, but it was just kind of like okay, like a little bit of a chip on their shoulder. And then here was the other thing that I think you need to just be reminded of on Saturday, at least not yesterday, but Saturday. The Penguins are not good. They're like third to last in the league in points. They're getting older. That team is really like, there's no direction right now. They don't have goaltending. So when you factor in a team like the Caps that went on a bunch of rest, then was going to get to play that team, I knew it was going to be a bloodbath. I had said it on Friday on my show. The Caps are going to win this, and they're going to win this big because they're going to be shot out of a cannon. The one factor that I did not know about was Connor McMichael, when he talked with John yesterday, he said something along the lines of, we were at a point in the season where things were getting a little stale. Like, I think, and he even like walked back stale, like just to kind of say they were in that no man's land part of the season where they just needed a break. And what was funny is they needed a break, but they still didn't lose in regulation at home.
Right.
The whole entire stretch. Like
they were coming back in games. Like there was that one in Ottawa where Ottawa's not that great or whatever, but it was like the second of a back-to-back, and it was the end of a long road trip, and they got down. And it was just one of those like obvious, you're just going to, okay, we'll get them next time, guys. And they didn't. And they like salvaged a point out of it. And that's when I started looking at that. I'm like, first off, this guy's the coach of the year. Two, like they're give him all the awards because they're running away with the Eastern Conference with the team that people picked once again to maybe make the playoffs because of all the changes that they made.
And so now it does kind of make sense. Like they were playing with their food a little bit. That was last week, before the Four Nations break. So all of those factored into, okay, we're going to play Pittsburgh, and the score helped them out in Pittsburgh. They got to roll all four lines in the third period. So therefore, they didn't have to play all their top six guys, get a bunch of minutes, and then they play Edmonton. Yesterday was a clinic, though. That was a completely night and day difference between Saturday into Sunday because that's one of the better teams in the league. You know how good McDavid is. He's the best player in the league coming off that Four Nations tournament. McDavid didn't have a shot yesterday. He didn't have a shot on net yesterday because Pierre-Luc Dubois was covering him. The defensive wherewithal of this team is what is actually the most shocking part of the entire season. We knew that they could probably score if it was a boom or bust scenario, but the way defensively they've been has been incredible. So yesterday was really the clinic. And then you had Ovechkin that was like, wait a minute, you guys scored 8 goals without me. Let me get in on this. He scores 2 legit goals, then gets the empty netter from the other side of the ice. You couldn't have written it better for 2 games out of the break for this one.
I don't know. Did you see you were doing the radio, so you probably didn't see it. Maybe you've seen it after. PK Subban, I mean, it was full-on takedown of the Penguins. Like in the middle. Granted, they're getting blood, but it was a full-on. It was one of the, like, if you like hot takes, it wasn't even a hot take. It was just a full-on takedown. Like he's like called out the GM by name and goes, I don't know what you're doing. Like the players don't know what you're doing. You've hamstrung this coach who's sitting there coaching the Canadian or the American team because he's one of the best coaches in the NHL. You're not even giving him a chance to win, and I don't even know what you're doing right now. So, like, this was something. Listen, they were both going. We were talking about this a couple years ago. They were both going in the exact same direction. They've got these old legendary players. They're going to end up being in Ring of Fames, if not Hall of Fames. Like between Malkin and Crosby, Ovechkin, Backstrom, Oshie, they're all going to be in the Hall of Fame. These are all Hall of Fame players, or at bare minimum, Ring of Fame players. We know that Crosby and Malkin and Ovi, and I think Backstrom, are all going into the NHL Hall of Fame at some point in time, right? And I kept talking about this. I'm like, we're going for this record. This is a tough needle to thread. Can you actually go for this stuff and be competitive at the same time? And I thought they waited about a year or two too late. And they looked really old for a couple of years. The Penguins have not turned the page at all. They still rely on their best players are these old dudes who I appreciate that they'll play through anything, but they're old guys now. Who are their young stars on their team? And Washington did it by, and I'll get to this other point in a minute with what the front office did, because they clearly need to get the award for like front office of the year for doing what they did. The Penguins don't seem to have this young core coming up and don't seem to have found people in the open market to help bridge a gap. And so they're an old timer show. Like they're ridiculous to watch. Their goaltending was terrible. And then they've got these older, great greats, all-time greats, who have nothing around them. It's Yankees old-timers day when they just run them out there and they can't throw the ball anymore. They can't hit the ball anymore. It was actually pathetic to watch, really.
Well, the one thing I will say is Sidney Crosby can still turn it on. Like, he had a goal the other day. He had a goal the other day where I was like, hat tip to you, sir. Like, you are still very good at hockey.
But like, look at Ovechkin is realistically, what is he on his, I mean, yes, he scored a lot of goals this year. Realistically on his team, what would you place him as best player, like ranked best players on the team? Where would you put him right now? It's where he should be, somewhere in the middle of the pack. If Sidney Crosby is still your best player and by far, what are you right now?
To your point with the Penguins too, you have to give credit where the Caps, I know you haven't liked some of the deals that they've given out in the past, but it's never hamstrung them from signing their own talent. When it really started was last year. It was either last year or the year before. I think it was last year with the Penguins, where they had to trade Jake Gensel. And you watched enough Caps Penguins game that you're like, you're trading that guy? Like, you guys are the Penguins.
He was their best player for like the last few years.
Correct. And so when they had to trade him because they couldn't get a long-term deal done or they couldn't make it work, I went, you're not only mismanaging your actual roster, you're mismanaging like your young superstar, and they had to trade him to Carolina, and then he's moved on as well. So I would just say that with Gensel, that essentially they had their young star, but they mismanaged things so much by trading and kicking this thing down the line that it's now staring them in the face. They have an old team with not a lot of direction and no goaltending, by the way. That's their number one thing, by the way.
Yes.
They've not figured out goaltending, and that's been a problem for like 5 years running now. That's not just a 2-year thing. Like, they had Tristan Jarry that was pretty good for a bit, but then
pretty good. Yes, he was post Marc-Andre Fleury, and he was pretty good.
It was Jarry and
pretty good. Yes.
Yeah, it was Jarry and Murray were the two guys that we saw that were kind of trying to take it over. Those guys fell into a crater essentially and have not been good. And then you flip it over to just how the Caps have done things, though. And I remember trying to defend them a couple years ago where they were trying to do both, but they were being smart with it. They were moving on from those expiring contracts at the deadline. Like, they were trading some of those 1-year contracts to get some assets back to kind of reload or just get ready for another little bit of a run here. And here it is. They have done just that. They didn't go and make these dumb contracts. The worst contract that they had was Darcy Kemper, and they flipped him for arguably a worse contract, but Dubois has been amazing this year.
That's turned out well for them. That was scary. That was a risky thing to do. That was a really, really, really risky thing to do.
Correct.
It's worked out. Will it work out long term? I don't know. There's a lot of years left on that. Sure. But yes, that one has come up roses for them, obviously, because he was painted as he's going to sink you guys. Like, that's what because he's got too much term, too much money. He's a really good player, but there's problems. He keeps floating around the league. Why does he keep doing that? I don't know. You're about to find out. Well, it turns out that Caps culture works for him. So that's good.
It's literally not our problem that he's going to be a problem, because he came in here. He's done everything that they've asked him to do. And what I always loved about with Dubois, the story with him as well, especially in the first half of the season when people were looking at that contract and going, man, he's not really scoring a lot with how much they're giving him. And everyone real quick was like, nope, go watch what he's doing defensively. Go watch how much he's making plays. Look how much he's facilitating play. The points and the goals will come. And they have essentially over the last couple of months. So that's another one where they got him in here on the cheap. And he's, as you said, gone roses. And then the other one is Logan Thompson. I mean, that's move of the offseason, essentially. Thompson and Chychrun. Chychrun has 16 goals now, I think. It's so ridiculous for a defenseman. But Thompson, getting your future goaltender for, what was it, a second-round pick or 2 second-round picks or whatever it is they gave to Vegas, and Vegas couldn't get rid of him fast enough. Every single move has worked out for this team, and not just to be a good team, be the best team in the NHL, essentially.
I think this is where the Renaissance part of this comes in. They and the Commanders are going through the same thing in some ways. Like, they flipped over the coach. They didn't change the organization that much, but they flipped over the coach. The coach has changed his ways here. He is clearly the front runner for Coach of the Year. I don't know who would beat him over that, especially if they're going to run away from the Eastern Conference when everyone projected them to be wherever they are. And the same thing happened with this front office that really happened with Adam Peters. Where did they miss? Like, that's the most amazing part of it. And the Capitals took more risk in the signings that they brought in than the Commanders did. The Commanders, I lauded Peters often because he put no term and no real cap restrictions on his team by getting all of these players in here, and yet it all came up roses for him. Like they just had nothing that felt like a miss, and anything that was like, well, that didn't quite work out. It doesn't hamstring them whatsoever for the future, and I can't even name who that person is that they brought in. It's the same thing with the Caps. They took a lot of risks with a lot of these players they brought in. Name the one that has not really turned out for them. What, Mangiapane's not scoring a ton? Is that it? I mean, but he's not like a bad player.
Right.
It's all come up working out in a way like they're mirroring one another with kind of reshaping a roster, and it just takes off like a rocket ship.
No, I mean, and the most exciting part about it is, one, like you said, they kind of acted like the Commanders. So not a lot of term here either. So you can kind of manipulate the roster however you want to manipulate it. Like Chikrin's going to get
except Dubois, you're stuck with him for a long time.
Yeah. No. Yeah. But like beyond that, there's not much. Strome has a very limited cap hit. He's fine. Wilson has been re-signed. You're fine with that. Thompson, they re-signed at a solid price too. Like they're going to be able to manipulate the roster a little bit, and the NHL salary cap is going up for the first time in a while. So they're going to be able to make some moves. Chikrin's going to get paid. They should pay him because I don't really think they have another dynamic offensive defenseman.
They've already been talking to him, right? They're like trying to get that done. So that's going to get done. Yeah.
100%. I wouldn't be surprised though. Like an offensive defenseman who, brings to the table what he brings. I wouldn't be surprised if they can't get to a number and he hits free agency. I'm just throwing that out there because he's going to garner a lot of money and I don't blame him for that. But like the one guy that we haven't really had to talk about because things have been so good is like Ryan Leonard is due to join this team in the spring. Like
I was going to ask you about that. Is that, that's definitively happening now, the way that they're going? Yeah.
I mean, they're going to tell him, do you want to join a Stanley Cup level roster right now and jump right into the top six or, right into the third line? Like he's going to put them over the top. Like that's why the trade deadline is March 1st. I want to say it is. And the craziest part about that is if they don't do much, don't panic about it because they have one of the best prospects in hockey ready to go when he's done playing in college. So yeah, like, is it definitive? No, but they're going to go to him like, dude, if you don't want to join now, like what are we doing here? Because if you don't want to join now, that means you don't want to join training camp next year either. We got to have a conversation about that if you really want to go to Boston College for your junior year. So I think he's definitively going to join this team, and that's just another factor that they're going to add here that's young, fast, dynamic. I told you, he's like Tom Wilson. He will get in dudes' faces. He's going to be that next guy that every other team hates and we're going to love that's on our team. So, there's reinforcements on the way as well.
And at the same time, which I did not think they could do both of these things at the same time, this record's going to go down, and it looks like it's going to happen this year. So they scored 15 goals in 2 games. It took to the second one
24 hours.
For Ovi to get 3. And I was with you when they had 8 and he didn't have one. But in the third period, they were feeding him, trying to get him shot because they got a power play. And they were openly just trying to feed him to give him an opportunity to score, which I appreciated because the game was over at that point. So they went through a flurry in the second period and they got up big on Pittsburgh. They were trying to get him to score. So yesterday was Ovi didn't like seeing everybody else score and got 3 against Edmonton, and now he's 13 away. I did notice that the last game of the season is in Pittsburgh, and there's something about that if he were to break it there, I actually think would be very cool. I'd love to see him do it at home, obviously, and it's probably going to get into April before he actually does it, which means it'll butt up right against the end of the season. But there is something very cool about the idea of him breaking that record on Pittsburgh's ice. That would actually be amazing if that happened.
No, I mean, with the storied rivalry of those two teams and the two players, there would be something special about that. I've said this too before. I think Capitals fans and Penguins fans have kind of put down the torches a little bit and are more handshaky towards each other because we both know we're about to leave this era behind, and it's kind of enjoy it while you can.
This is Brady Manning. They're buddies now.
Exactly.
This is Bird Magic. They're buddies now. Yeah.
And I think the fan bases are acting that way too. They kind of know, like, once this is over, we don't know if it's really going to get much better than having these two go at it. So
it won't.
Right, exactly. And so I do think there's a little bit something special. I will say this off of this weekend. A hat trick is exactly what he needed to jumpstart this thing again because he had slowed down scoring a little bit. And he needed just like a multi-goal game. I was saying get 2 goals over the weekend and we're fine. Getting a hat trick against Edmonton, I'll take every time. Because you know how Ovechkin does this. he gets his goals in bunches now. And like they get the Flames on Tuesday. Let's see what he does against them. You know how this is going to work. He's going to get to like, I don't know. He's going to get to like 5 goals fast, like 5 away. And then it's going to be sweating it out every single night. And then when he does, he's going to get 2 or 3 each night and break that record. But I think we're going to sweat it out a little bit more than we think.
Let me ask you this. This is a preemptive question, and because I don't know the answer to it. Do you think he's going to leave the NHL and retire if he breaks the record this year after the playoffs? Especially if they win? Do you think he would? You think he'll play it out?
Definitively, he's only got 1 year left on his contract. He has always said he's going to play his contract.
He will play it out no matter what, even if he breaks the record this year, and even if they have a long, deep Stanley Cup run. You think he'll come back and play again?
Yeah, because next year's his last year of his deal. So I think he does it. He does the victory tour. Like, I think I don't know if he'll make the decision, but I do think he deserves to do the whole, this is my last year. And then every team gets to wheel out a gift for him or whatever. Like
everybody gives him their best version of chicken parm before the game.
I was going to say they give him like a piece of every single goal, you know, right? Like every single net or, you know, literal like iron on the goal. Yeah, whatever. But I think he deserves that. But I think 100% he's going to play out the year next year, no matter what happens. Right. I don't put it past him though, to not make that decision and then maybe say, I'm going to come back for 1 more year, because look, like, here's the other thing too. You know how athletes work. They're really good now. So like, he's having a fun time again. He's enjoying himself. Like, I wouldn't put it past Ovi to just say, hey, this team's really good. I'll sign a 1-year deal and let's talk about it on the other side here. I don't know what the percentage chances of that, but I will say he will be playing next year no matter what. Like, I have no doubt about that one.
Bit more of like a role player where he's a specialist.
I mean,
he's out there on the power play and
sure. Why not? Like, he's good enough. And also, Ovi's picked his spots. You've seen this in the past couple of years. Defensively, he's not that much of a liability anymore. Like, he can actually still get down there, block a shot, and play all right defensively. So
he also really wants to break this year. He took this 2-week break and worked out the whole time.
Yep. Yeah,
he clearly wants to break it this year. Like, that's it. So I think he will. Right? Like, now I'm like I can't believe it. After he had the broken bone earlier this year, I'm like, well, it's not going to happen this year. It's going to happen next year. I'm shocked that we're back in this spot where he's about to do it again.
I know better than to doubt this guy's wherewithal at this point. What's crazy is if you would put all the games together this year, he would score, I think, like 56 goals. If he were to play in all 82, that'd be good for his second highest total. The last time he did that, he was 23 years old. So, like, the fact is that he's still scoring at a really good clip. I think he wants to get the record. I think he wants to get the record this year, so he doesn't have to sit around all summer with everybody talking about the chase and all of that. I think he wants to put it behind him, and then the next milestone is 900, right? Like, because he will get to 900 if he breaks it this year and then plays next year. So I think that's really what he wants to do. I think he wants to just put it behind him and then have a normal offseason. That's what I think.
I think he's got to be the greatest, at bare minimum, most influential athlete to ever play here. You count Sammy Baugh and Walter Johnson, but you'd be going way back, and I guess maybe, like, because for longevity and greatness and that much better than everybody else, like, those are the only two that would come to, like, listen, Riggo was like a really great player and a really influential athlete in this area. He didn't play that long here, I think, to like warrant having a conversation like this about him. Darryl Green is the only Redskins player I can think of, because he played for so long here. But like, this guy changed hockey around here, and he's going to be the greatest scorer of all time. I don't know that there's anybody that's come through here that's more influential than him, and maybe the best team sport player we've ever had here in this area.
I don't think it's a might. I've said this for the last like 6 years. I called this about a long time ago, that he is the best team sport player that's ever come through the city. He's going to break the all-time goals record in a sport. Like, all those players you've named were really, really good. Like, Walter Johnson had all these records and pitch, but like, you can have that argument of who was he pitching against? Like John, who had a grocery store job.
Sammy Baugh literally changed the quarterback position, like literally changed the quarterback position, but it's just a total different time. So
right, and he was a punter too. Like that was just a different game, right? Like it's completely different. I think when you really have to say it with Ovechkin, it is his longevity. Like, the fact that he has been so freaking consistent. In a down year was when he scored like 28, 29 goals or something, and everyone's going up, the downfall is starting. That was in like 2014. Like, that was so long ago, and he's been great since then and has always been great. He keeps hitting these milestone markers, and he's been healthy this whole time. There's really no one like him. And to, like, not disparage Darrell Green, but like Darrell Green was not the starting cornerback by the end, right? Like, he was on the roster and he was still playing, but and
there's only so much impact you can have when you're one specific player in a team sport like that, where they can avoid you if they really want to avoid you. Yeah.
Exactly. And then when you look at Ovechkin too, I think one of the most impressive things besides his consistency and besides his health is how Ovechkin has evolved over the years. He used to be this big physical scoring type guy. Yes. Remember, if he still catches
people. Yes.
He still catches guys if you're not looking, but like, he only does it once or twice a year at this point. But he used to hit the crap out of people and score, be really physical. Then we saw it evolve to be a little bit more of a two-way game. And I think in that 2018 season when they won the Stanley Cup, the most underrated part about him was being a facilitator. He still does that too, where he knows guys are keying in on him. He passes it, gets all these assists now. His evolution has been really fun to watch too, and it's been so unselfish. And I think that's the other factor of this too. Ovechkin's personality is so contagious. Like, he clearly loves the game. It's crazy to see him in this gray hair and this gray beard still act like he did literally 15 years ago, like he did when he was a kid, essentially. I think that's the other factor here, is he's just so likable, and he's never really said anything bad or like controversial besides the whole Putin thing, but that's a whole other conversation. But like, other than that, like, the guy's just been a grade A athlete for the city too. And as you said too, he basically changed a whole entire franchise's trajectory. Like, I wonder what the Caps were worth before they drafted him and what they're worth now. Like, they're breaking sellout records. They're breaking ticket records. Like, they don't do that without him. That's a hell of an impact to say the least.
He's Michael Jordan. Like, the Bulls were one thing, and Michael Jordan showed up, and the Bulls are something else entirely because of him, even 25, 30 years later. It's the same thing with this team.
Yeah, no, exactly right.
They'll be defined by his legacy forever, regardless of what they do here moving forward.
And I think the number one factor, and one of the factors here is, like, look at someone like me. I'm 35, right? And the sports team synonymous with our area was always the Redskins football team Commanders. And once they started to kind of hit that downturn when Snyder owned the team, the 2005, 6, 7, 8, like that, this team was on the up and up. And everybody my age is a Caps fan. Everybody my age has been to Caps games, owns an OV jersey. Like, I don't know if I've ever seen a guy kind of drag an entire, like, age subset of people into liking this sport.
Yes.
And I mean that male, female, families, everything. He's been playing for almost 20 years at this point, and he's synonymous with the area. That is just so hard to do in today's modern age, and he's doing it right in front of our eyes.
I did see this one note, so that I guess that hat trick for him was his 32nd or something like that in his career. He gets one more, he would tie Brett Hull for, like, it was like 4th or 5th most ever, something like that, if he were to get another one. Here's the number he won't catch with Gretzky. Gretzky has 50 some of them.
Yeah,
right. Like, okay, so there will be a forever argument of who was actually a better scorer, because there are some things that you will see that Gretzky had. That said, the goaltenders had small pads and smoked in between periods.
That's right.
So it's an impossible comparison really to make, because it's just a very different game. And I would argue it's much harder to score now than it ever was when Gretzky played, not to diminish what he did, because he's going to end up having 25 to 30 more hat tricks than Ovi had in his career, which is a really amazing number.
That's always going to be the argument between these two, is Gretzky's points and assists are so much higher.
They're so outrageous. Yes.
And like,
he's Jerry Rice to receivers. They're just, the numbers are so outrageous that even if anyone passes them like Ovi will, you will still be able to make an argument that he was better. You will.
Yeah, but you already hit the nail on the head. The goaltending was so completely different back then, which is also a factor of how impressive it has been for Ovechkin, that he has been able to score. It doesn't matter who it is. I think he's scored on like 180 goaltenders now. I think yesterday was 181 or 182. They pointed
out the Pittsburgh goaltender that he didn't score on. They were like, he would be, Sean McDonough kept saying he would be number whatever. And they were loading it up for him over and over on those power plays the other day, trying to get him a goal.
Yeah. So like, that's the other factor here too, is it doesn't matter who his name, who he has scored on. And it's been so funny to go down that list of goaltenders that he has scored on, because there are just some names you haven't heard in a while. But yeah, I mean, that's the other impressive part about all this. By the way, I just wanted one thing here too. Shout out to the Edmonton coach for actually pulling the goaltender down 3 goals yesterday. He did not have to do that. I think he really, I don't think he had to do that, but I think, he's going, I've got McDavid, 3 goals, whatever.
Why not?
I think there was a little bit of a nod of like, screw it. If OV scores, is this the worst thing for the game? Which is like what I've been screaming about pretty much for the last 2 years. Pull the goaltender so this guy gets another opportunity. I stuck around to watch the third period. I watched the game on Saturday, and I stuck around they blew him out. I could have turned it off, but I stuck around to watch it because I knew this was going to happen. Like, it was amazing that they were dominating so much that the Capitals used a power play on purpose just to try to set up one player to score goals. Like, they were toying with them, like literally toying with them. It was really crazy. There's one other factor here too. Spencer Carberry has obviously been like asked about, oh, you guys are in first place, but also this goal thing, and he's asked about it every day, essentially, in some way, shape, or form, right? And me being as close to it as I am, I think there is a factor here where the team actually is using it both ways, where they're saying, let's play our asses off. Let's play really hard. And then when we're up in the third period, we get to try to get this guy a goal. Like, I do think there's a little bit of a factor here of like, let's play really well for 2 periods, get into the third period where we play our best hockey. That's where the Caps have been the best this season, that I think that they get to go. If we get to play really well, we'll have an opportunity to get that guy another goal in the third period.
All right, let me take a quick break. I want to get back to the other Renaissance things that are going on around here. Bram, watch the show. ESPN 630, the Sports Capital.
Some people just know they could save hundreds on car insurance by checking Allstate first. Like, to check the Jumbotron first, before attempting to eat a stack of Supreme nachos in one bite. Now you're just a meme that everyone shares on game day. Checking first is smart, so check Allstate first for a quote that could save you hundreds. You're in good hands with Allstate. Savings vary, subject to terms, conditions, and availability. Allstate Fire and Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates, Northbrook, Illinois.
Since you're new to H&R Block, we'll look at your returns from the last 3 years for any money your last guy might have missed for free.
I could get money back from last year?
You could. We'll find any mistakes.
Could have really used that 2 years ago when I dated that mistake for 5 months.
Don't leave money on the table. Switch to H&R Block and get a free Second Look review. Second Look is included at no additional cost with the purchase of tax preparation. Results vary. All tax situations are different. Fees apply if you have us file an amended return.
All right, welcome back. All right, so the whole premise, I didn't expect we would talk about the Capitals for 30 minutes, but they deserved it off of what that they've done here and the trajectory that they're on. And 15 goals in 2 games, back-to-back, after weird afternoon games, 15 goals. I mean, like, yes, Pittsburgh stinks now, but still 8 on their ice is absurd in this league. And then to turn around and score 7 again against one of the better teams, what a crazy weekend to restart, which, the second half or this kind of race. Everything's very compacted. You're going to be playing a lot of home games now. They could totally run away from the Eastern Conference here over the next couple of weeks. So we'll see what happens. But it's not just them. Obviously, there's a lot going on around here. And we're going to find out in the next couple of weeks. Like, remember the reporting back in the fall, free agents were openly trying to get traded to Washington. That's what Adam Schefter was reporting. Now are the free agents going to be openly vying to try to come here? And I haven't heard anything yet. We haven't heard a lot of the smoke of where do the free agents want to go, the ones that aren't going to get hindered by tags of some form or another. Like, I wondered, would a Chris Godwin, if he were to get to free agency, want to come to a team like the Commanders because they just lost to them in the playoffs and sees what's happening with this quarterback? I don't want to speak for him. I don't know. I'm using him as an example, but it looks like they're going to get a deal done and potentially tag him. I don't think there's a ton of names on this list that I'm going, gee, I hope you really, really, really want to come here. But we are in the middle of this renaissance with this team as well. This could be a big week. Do we start hearing smoke of players who don't want to either re-sign with their current teams or are earmarking trying to come here? And I think it's a realistic thing to think about considering what the reporting has been and what the obvious upside is with playing with Jaden Daniels.
Well, I would say this too. We already have a track record. Jaden Daniels hadn't played a down yet in the league, and Brandon Ayuk was already trying to get himself to Washington all last summer. Remember
Malik Neighbors would do it tomorrow if the Giants would trade him here. He would. He would do it. They're also best friends, so that might be different. But he's all but said that.
he was the one showing up to both playoff games and supporting him. So like, I would say this too. He hasn't even been shy about it. So it already started before he played it down. Let's see what it realistically is with some of the veterans. It's one thing to say this with younger players, because Ayuk too, I think everyone kind of forgets he was the same. Was he the same age as Jaden, or just a year older, something like that? Because Jaden's a little bit older.
Yes, they were playing. I know Ayuk's been in the league for a couple of years, but they were playing together at Arizona State when Jaden was a freshman.
But what I'm getting at with that one was like, don't get it twisted. He's played with them before, and he already wanted to play with them, in the NFL. Let's see what it looks like with veterans. I think this is going to be the week that we start to see some of those rumors of who wants to come here, or do the Godwin talks fall through because he wants to come here? I don't know. Like, I don't think that's going to be the case, but yeah.
I don't think so either. They wouldn't have moved that deadline on that contract. Exactly. They moved the deadline. I took him off the board because they moved that deadline, which always kind of reiterates, we're willing to talk to you about your terms.
Right, exactly. So I don't know. I think we will see something here of guys that want to come here, and let's see what Adam Peters can do in terms of like taking advantage of that. Because maybe there's defensive players that want to do this too, that want to say, I want to join that team and get them over the hump.
Yeah. So we'll see this week. The combine starts. Adam Peters is going to talk tomorrow. Dan Quinn's going to talk on Wednesday. We'll probably get to those later because we tape this thing before they're going to actually speak. I want to hear what Peter says. I've learned enough to know he's not going to say much. He doesn't really talk to anybody. It's been very quiet. Like, there are no leaks. Like, who do they want? Like, clearly they're going to be active. Will they be aggressive and define aggressive? I don't really know. Like, I don't think they're going to throw bad money at somebody just to try to fill a hole. But I do think they'll be aggressive. They have a lot of cap room to work with, and they have a lot of holes to fill. And there are positions, specifically wide receiver, that I look at and I go, they need to get 3 signed anyway. And there's a long list of players. And I look at, that's the position I look at and I go, you think some of those guys aren't telling their agents they don't want to come here and play with this guy? Of course they do. Like, does the D tackle from Dallas definitively want to come here? I don't know. Maybe he does. Maybe he doesn't. He, by the way, might be off the board too. I've already heard reports out of Dallas that they've already approached his agent. They're trying to sign Odigizua to come back, and they're going to end up paying him a lot of money, which I actually think sometimes you avoid a grenade. Like, I think this guy's going to be a good player. I don't know that he's better than John or Duran. You're going to pay him about the same amount of money? Really? Are you? Okay. Like, I think he's a good player, but you got to be careful. Like, when you get to that point, I look at the offensive players and I go, which of those guys are looking at this and going, if I have my choice, you're going to let me open up the market? Are we not calling them to go play with this guy? Like, I believe that to be the case.
No, I'm 100% in on that too. Especially too, you look at some of these teams as well that might need some weapons. I don't think the level of quarterback matches the need of weapons with like this team. Like, you look at a team like the Patriots who have all this money or whatever, and you can believe in Drake May. That's fine. I completely understand that, but he's not Jaden. Like, so that's where I've fallen into this too, is the need of weapons with as good of a quarterback that's here does not match up anywhere else in the entire league.
Like, let's just say some player liked Caleb Williams. Well, they already have DJ Moore, Roma Dunze, Cole Kmet. Like, there's not a lot of room there to actually add, so like, this is the team that has options. I have been I'll get into the combine more later this week. I want to see where this Ohio State running back goes. I love B-Rob, but I do think that there could be, an addition to that room with him and Eckler. And I really like this Ohio State running back. The running backs are, typically outside of Genty, who's going to go high, I would think, in the first round. They're typically not, but I think the weakness of this draft on top-tier talent leads me to believe that someone like that actually might be gone before the Commanders get around to him. Nor do I think Adam Peters would be likely to take a running back with 29. But when they do, and typically have fallen into the second round, if he's one of them, he's one of the guys that's caught my eye that I really, really like. I know there's 2 of them, but it's Henderson. That's the one I really like. And I don't know if he's going to get to us, but that's one that I'm looking at for the combine. All right, the other thing that I'm wondering about, because the magic seems to be rubbing off. The Commanders had a magical season. I don't think anyone expected them to do what they did. The Capitals are having a magical season. I don't think anyone expected them to do what they did. I do not think it will be like this for the Nationals. However, there is a lot of magic going on around here these days, and the one thing you can pin your hopes on is that their outfield is going to be astronomically better than it's been over the last however many years. And that is where the hope is. I don't think they've done, anything in free agency to make their team particularly better. And I don't like their lineup just in general, but there are two dudes that are walking out there in the outfield, and we got a taste of James Wood, and we're going to get a real taste of Dylan Cruz. And I'm willing to hear out that things are going to be a little bit different in the middle of their order based on those two guys. And maybe they are heading up in the way that they've suggested that they're heading, but it will be based on those two for sure.
No, absolutely. I went on a little bit of a rant on this on either Thursday or Friday on my show, where those are the two guys that you're hinging your whole future on, right? Besides the pitching. The young pitching is actually probably more important than these two because they need to be more consistent. They need to learn how to be major leaguers. But it was kind of funny. Mark Lerner, when he spoke with Barry Svrluga, I'll be briefly, right, said that, he hadn't seen it yet, that like they were waiting to, spring a free agent on this roster because he just hadn't seen it yet. And I just kind of went on a little rant on Thursday or Friday where I was like, are you telling me you don't have faith in those two? Because if you don't, we need to restart the whole thing over again.
It also is just so ridiculous to say that when you don't have a salary cap and you can spend for talent whenever you want.
That's right. And so, but what I put it up against was Davey Martinez. He said on day one of camp, he had a speech to the guys, to the boys, and said, essentially, we are here to win. And when he was asked by reporters like what that meant, he said meaningful games in September. And so, you know what? Once again, you know how I like to do this. All right, Davey's the one that said it. Meaningful games in September. He's not saying make the playoffs. He's not saying World Series. He's saying don't get eliminated by September. Essentially, that's what that translation is to me, and that's fine. Like if you're going to be realistic with me, I'm okay with it. See Washington Wizards this year. So, you know what? Fine. Nats, I'll back off a little bit this season. But if you are, once again, 71-90 or whatever the record is for the third year in a row, I'm going to be pissed. But if you make a jump here, you get around 500, maybe a little bit above 500, and you're not eliminated with, unless there's like 2 weeks left in the season, I'll hear you on this one. With those two guys, it's those two guys, and you need CJ Abrams to step back up as well. And if those three guys are going, I think the core of the future can be worked with. I'm not going to say it's like gangbusters, but it can be worked with.
Last one on the Renaissance around here. We talked about this last week. The Terps have been beyond red hot on the court. They get a heat check test. Michigan State's here Wednesday night. So they're going to find out, I think, exactly where they are because they've blown teams out over the last couple of weeks. They're really coming on. They're calling their starting five the Crab Five suddenly now. So they've got a nickname for them. So we'll see how far they go. And then, all the underlings of college basketball, George Mason and AU could both win their conferences. AU's only got 2 games left. They're 1 up and 2 up on the rest of the field. So they're 1 up on, I think it's Bucknell. If they win one of their next 2, they likely win their conference, which means they would play all of their conference tournament games at home, which means they could get to the NCAA tournament. Mason is tied for the top of their conference as well. They've been red hot too. So it's been really going around here. Mystics and Wizards, whatever, but both in the process. I saw the Mystics made a big trade and they've totally reset. I still will forever not understand why they did not draft Angel Reese a year ago. That made no sense to me at all, but whatever. They are both in their process, so I don't think the Renaissance really involves them yet, but maybe it will at some point. All right, let me take a quick break. Bram watches show be at 6:30 Sports Capital.
When the game tips off, the NBA action is just beginning on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Because FanDuel is your home for NBA live betting. However you want to play, now is the perfect time to join. Make every moment more with FanDuel, official sports betting partner of the NBA. 21 plus and present in Virginia. First online, real money wager only. $5 first deposit required. Bonus issued is non-withdrawable bonus bets which expire 7 days after receipt. Restrictions apply. See terms at sportsbook.fanduel.com. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER.
All right, welcome back. I was surprised to see this. Ian Rappaport, I want to revisit the Commanders for a minute. Ian Rappaport did here are projected players we think might get cut by their teams over the next period of time, whether it's before free agency starts or June 1st or whatever. And he mentioned Marshawn Lattimore as a possible cut over the weekend, which it was a weird one because I had got no indication that there was any momentum towards anything like that. It would be admitting they made a mistake. It'd be the first time they admitted they made a mistake by doing the pick swap. It was a third for, I think, a fifth or something like that. They took on the money. There is no guaranteed money left. The Saints had to eat all of that. And he is owed a lot of money. It's like $18 million over the next couple of years. But they had openly said, we knew we were getting him. He was injured. We were hoping he would be able to, help us out towards the end of the regular season. They got him out there. Mixed, I think, would be the best way to put it with him. He had a couple of moments where they didn't get targeted at all. And he had a couple of games where he got shredded and got a couple penalties. And A.J. Brown really took advantage of him a couple of times, specifically in the conference championship game. So it's mixed for sure, but I've kind of just walked into it going, let's see if we can get him healthy, get him a full off season, and then let's see where he's at next year. And if things don't go well, he won't be here for the year after that. But if it does, then all's well that ends well. They brought somebody into a new situation who was hurt, and they asked him to try to play, give him a little bit of time. Seeing this was surprising because Ian doesn't guess a lot. And so the idea that he even put that out there I was taken aback by it a little bit, almost like, where did he get that from? And I don't think it's from the Washington front office because they don't talk to anybody about anything. So I'm more inclined to believe he thinks he's hearing that from someone who's not a source in the Washington front office. It doesn't mean it doesn't have some merit. I really doubt that happens. And the way he described it was, I see it as unlikely. And so do I. But I was surprised to see it. When I did see it, considering it came from him, I wondered where he got that idea from.
The only thing I could think of is this is like a big brain cut by Peters and company, but to say, we don't really care about the 18 mil this year. It's the 18 mil next year. And that, hey, when we sign somebody, we're taking that money into account as well. But this isn't like this is some team up against the cap. That's what I'm not really following here. Like, I see the John Allen one. I think you could get similar production with a player that you pay a certain amount of money. Like, if you think you can economically get by that one, I understand it. With Lattimore, I don't. There's not a replacement on this team. And, oh, by the way, we keep saying they need to add one more cornerback as well. So I just don't see it here. I think he's worth the risk at this point. And like I said, you're not up against the cap. Like, you're not penny pinching right now.
I think if it doesn't go well next year, then obviously I think a decision will have to be made.
Yeah.
But I'm with you. Like, they don't have a cap problem. They have all this cap room, and he's currently in it. So I don't really see why they would need – I wouldn't restructure him off of what happened to extend it. I think that was initially some of the thought because, like, remember Peters came out and said, he's here for the long haul, which insinuated we might restructure him to get more cap room. But I think off of this year, I wouldn't do that now because I wouldn't want to extend it out any longer. I want him to show me next year that he can stay healthy and play to the ability that he has and to the level that he did in the past. So that's where I am on him. But just seeing Rappaport write it did give me reason to believe, like, wait a minute, I think we need to see what's going on here because he doesn't just throw crap out there. And that's why I was kind of like, when he said it. I don't believe it for all of the reasons cited. And I think they're going to go through the offseason and they're going to get through to next season. And hopefully he's healthy. And then we'll see what he's made of next summer.
There's one factor here that, like, maybe it's the case is maybe Lattimore wants a new deal. Maybe Lattimore knows that there's no guaranteed money. And maybe that's he and his agent putting out there that, hey, we're not going to play,
Off of the way he played. I mean, like one coming back. And again, I'm willing to excuse him because I know he was still hurt and everything. I don't know how you could demand anything like that at this point, but that's just me. And maybe that's what he's hearing from the agent. Maybe.
Right, because I guess if you're Lattimore and you get a 2-year, $25 million deal, $20 million guaranteed, well, at least that's a little more guaranteed money that you're going to get there. Like, the only thing I can think of is if that's the rationale behind this. I don't know, though. I literally don't know.
Yeah, I don't either. All right, we'll talk to you all tomorrow. Very much the show, ESPN 630 is Sports Capital.